Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our next session. It is entitled Privacy and Security, Protecting Consumers. I am Patrice Samuels, and I'll be leading this session. Now, before we get into the discussion, I'd like to thank our sponsors. They're Alarm.com, Amtrust, Plumes, and Earties. Now, before we get into the panelist introductions, I'd like to provide a brief overview on the topic. So we're seeing where concerns about data security and privacy, that they've been increasing in recent years. And we're seeing where it is increasingly serving as a barrier to adoption of smart home products as well. So right now we're seeing where 35% of consumers who do not own or intend to purchase a smart home device report that security and privacy concerns are the reasons that they do not purchase the device. Now, because of these privacy and security concerns and breaches, we've seen where there are a lot of government agencies and regulators in many countries that are starting to implement measures geared at improving security and privacy. However, these issues have also created an opportunity for third parties, cybersecurity testing and certification services that are geared at driving greater consumer trust in connected products. So the next chart here that you're looking at is showing the general sort of purchase incentives for purchasing smart home devices. And you can see where sales and promotions are the most effective purchase incentive. However, we're seeing where the product being cybersecurity tested by a testing lab is actually the second most effective incentive for purchasing these devices. And that is even more than help with setting up the device itself, and even more than technical support and warranty for 5 or more years. So we're seeing where cybersecurity or security and privacy, are increasingly important to success and growth in the smart home space. And with that brief intro, I'll get into the panel introductions. And we will start with Paula from FSecure. Paula, you want to go ahead?
Hi, everyone. I'm Paula Sophie from FSecure, and I'm responsible for the consumer security solution offering for the service provider with a special focus on IoT security and the connected home. So I'm joining you tonight from the very snowy and cold Finland. So great to be here. A brief intro of FSecure. FSecure is a global leader in the cybersecurity space, and we have been providing cybersecurity solutions and consulting services to enterprises and consumers for over 30 years. And our strategy is to provide value for the service providers by providing them holistic consumer security, holistic protection everywhere, making it very simple and seamless for the end users. And that covers things like or areas like internet security, privacy, VPN, identity protection, as well as IoT security for all of those connected devices in the home. In addition, why are we special, or what's our unique focus in the service providers channel is all a wide range of services that we provide for our partners to drive their commercial success, as well as the flexibility in deployment that is it then the holistic security solution with protection at home and on the go, or for example, combining the proposition with Wi-Fi management. So very happy to join today and looking forward for a great panel discussion.
Great, thanks Paula. And next we'll have ELIM from Amtrust North America. ELIM?
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. My name is ELIM Lakhani. I am with Amtrust North America Specialty Risk Group, part of Amtrust Financial, leading a property and casualty insurer operating worldwide in the particular area of specialty risk. We focus on warranty and extended warranty solutions in a variety of domains, bringing innovative underwriting, compliance, and warranty solutions in the automotive, consumer goods, and heavy equipment categories. In specific, my area of responsibility is examining emerging markets, particularly looking at the impact of disruptive technologies and what that means for opportunities to provide innovative applications in the warranty industry. So that includes smart home, smart health, and smart automotive. in those particular areas, we, in partnership with many others, look at how we can deliver appropriate solutions to augment the experiences that consumers have, to mitigate the friction associated with that, and deliver increasingly efficient operational strategies along with new business models, and be able to facilitate more customer engagement and therefore bring a whole new dynamism to the processes such as underwriting, compliancy, and operational capabilities. We currently operate, as I mentioned, globally, and among some of the areas and clients that we support include in the automotive category, General Motors, Fiat Chrysler; in the consumer goods categories, Microsoft, HP, and the list goes on. Look forward to being able to have this discussion with you and then be able to, with our team, explore how we may be able to add value with warranty and extended warranty solutions in your business. Thank you again for inviting me to this panel.
And thank you. And now we'll have Sharon, who's a co-founder and COO at Firedom. Sharon, go ahead with your introduction.
Hi, everyone. Good to be here. A little bit about Firedom. Firedom works with leading IoT manufacturers as their trusted cybersecurity partner. We're working hand in hand with these manufacturers and IoT brands, assisting them in understanding and resolving their full cybersecurity needs to secure their devices and platforms. As a technology company, we've built an advanced AI real-time cybersecurity platform that provides the most advanced protection of the IoT devices. And this is coupled with our services such as 24/7 managed SOC, incident response, and breach investigation to provide the full end-to-end IoT security, as well as the means to communicate the cybersecurity superiority to the consumers and potential customers. Thus, companies working with Firedom achieve both the advanced end-to-end protection as well as the means to turn cybersecurity into a revenue-generating opportunity. We're a diamond-level certified component by UL Cybersecurity Rating. We're partners with ELIM Networks and Microsoft, and we're happy to work with any IoT brand that understands the opportunities and huge potential that comes with investing in cybersecurity. Happy to be here and looking forward to the very interesting discussion that we're going to have.
Thank you, Sharon. And now we'll go to Brad Reed, who's the CTO of IoT Alliance. Go ahead, Brad.
Hi there. I first would actually like to say I'm going to counterbalance the snow that Paula opened up with, and you'll bring you a little sunny Southern California. So I'm Brad Reed. I'm the CTO of the IoT Alliance. We're an organization of a little over 300 manufacturers, ecosystem operators, retailers, network operators, silicon providers, really all working to increase security and confidence in connected products for smart home, smart building, cellular IoT, and recently we just launched our mobile application certification program too for all connected products, along with VPN certifications. And really the core strength of what we're trying to do is we're trying to one, raise the bar of security and connected products, remove that fear and doubt from consumers, provide transparency so security can come forward, help it drive revenue. And then another very, very large part of the work that we do is we work with global regulators to sort of provide a industry-led approach to regulations. We all know that a certain level of regulations are needed, but we want to make sure that they're reasonable, that they can actually be implemented in light bulbs to cell phones, dog collars to set-top boxes. So that's really what we're up to.
All right, great. Thank you, Brad. All right, so now we will move into our panel discussion questions, and then after that, we'll be making some time for your questions, that is the audience questions at the end. So the very first question I'll be directing to both the panel and the audience is, how well is the smart home industry doing in building consumer confidence around connected products? So for the audience, you can answer by clicking the Poll tab in your control panel to the right of your screen. And for the panel, I'll kick it off with Brad. Let's start with Brad.
All right. So yeah, we're really concerned about security, as your survey showed and everything. It is absolutely adding friction to the purchase of products and everything. The other real thing that I see as a challenge around security transparency and affecting these purchases is, if you take a look at every time there's any kind of breach or hack, what's the top recommendation? You hear almost everyone in the press say you should buy products from known companies, known brands. One, that's not necessarily true. Two, that's a very large statement as to the challenges that we're facing, right? It actually, stifles innovation. There is a lot of really great small brands that are driving innovative solutions. And if you just go buy from the name brand because you think that's secure, leads you with false sense of security and, totally reduces adoption rates.
Great. Sharon, you want to chime in on that? Are we doing to drive consumer confidence or increase it?
Definitely. So I think I agree here with Brad. There is, as you said yourself, Patrice, there are 35% of the people who do not buy IoT devices is because they're afraid. Because they're afraid to let in these cameras, these devices that can hear and see everything they're doing. And if you look on the decision factors, the number one decision factor for buying an IoT device worldwide is security of this device. This is a big deal. And we're not doing a good job, because when you come to the store, when you look online, you have no idea as a consumer which device is better than the other device. When you look, when you don't know if this known brand, if Ring is doing a better job than Wise, for example. You have no idea as a consumer. So what we need to really do better is to work on the visibility and the transparency around cybersecurity and privacy, and ranking systems like the UL one and like the IOXT initiative. These are things that will help bring that transparency and allow the consumers to understand better and make more knowledgeable decisions about what kind of device they're bringing into their homes.
Got it. ELIM, you have any thoughts on this? How well are we doing?
Yeah, I don't disagree with anyone that's spoken. However, I have a slightly different perspective. First is IoT adoption, certainly from 2019 to 2020 has gone up. Not looking at the COVID numbers, I'm looking pre-COVID, the first quarter of 2020. Global Web Index, for example, published a report and showed very clearly that relative to all other markets, worldwide, in North America in particular, there was a more significant increase, albeit 2%. Two is also the research shows that indeed consumers are becoming more aware and are doing more research. So whereas before they were doing research with respect to other attributes in the buying journey, now when they're looking at IoT devices and smart devices, they're actually doing more research regarding privacy and security than they were ever before. However, there's still a knowledge gap that's still seen as one of the big impediments, to the point that was just raised by Sharon as an example, and also the efforts of Brad and others in the European markets and other markets, including the United Nations and in geographies like Africa, Asia, and in the Middle East. They're all focused on certification and bringing better awareness. So I think that there is movement in the right direction. I think consumers are making more decisions to buy with more information that's available. However, I do think things like certification and also the more rigorous regime that's being brought in all the geographies around the world, particularly Europe as a good example, is carving the way for us to be able to see even increasing adoption. But price is still a big factor. And as long as time continues, like we've seen with all the other technologies, price will continue to go down. And I think that'll be a good stimulant for more people to adopt.
Great. Great. Before I go to the audience. Paula, what do you think? How well are we going?
Let's see what the audience says about the consumer confidence. But we have all seen that the IoT adoption has increased significantly. I mean, all of us have a lot of these devices at home, and more are coming every day. But what's kind of worrying in our consumer research globally that we're looking into, that these consumer concerns and worries have increased in the past 2 years. So that's a significant increase, and probably has a lot to do with that the consumers are becoming more aware of the security and privacy risks that all of these devices have. And what is also worrying is the lack of trust in device makers, that 4 in 5 in consumers in our research see that the device makers are just not doing enough to ensure their security and privacy today. So there's a long way to go in the industry and for the different device manufacturers and the service providers to bring that confidence to the consumers. And of course, there are different ways in solving that problem, as we can see here. I mean, a lot of things we can do with the IoT Security Alliance, or just bringing security into the product itself, or then like a holistic cybersecurity solution that kind of covers all of those devices that you have. So there's a lot of things that can be done to restore or improve that consumer confidence.
Gotcha, don't disagree. All right, let's see what the audience thinks. Okay, so no one thinks we're doing extremely well, and that's not surprising. And then we have 38% who thinks we're doing somewhat well, 33% who are pretty neutral about the topic, and then 20% who think we're doing somewhat poorly. So there's something to be said that no one thinks we're doing extremely well, and a few that thinks we're doing extremely poorly. But it's a very mixed bag. So we're seeing 36% for doing well, 36% for neutral, and 20%. Similar to what I was hearing on the panel, we all think we need to improve, but I was hearing varying degrees of how well you think we're actually doing at this moment. So great, thank you for those responses. And I'll move on to the next question, which is, several European countries, such as Singapore, Germany, UK, and Finland, have all implemented security certification programs, if you will. What can we learn from these efforts then, in terms of improving our own security and certification, and to improve consumer trust, as we all just spoke about here in the US?
Well, if I can start, I think these programs are great. Finland was actually the first country to introduce IoT Security Certificate program back in 2019, and I contributed to that in an IoT networking group that the government agency had set up. And there was a lot of discussions that the governments are really concerned about the security and privacy of these connected devices, and it's like a ticking time bomb if nothing or no appropriate measures are taken to improve this. And the certification programs, I mean, many have followed Finland, like Singapore, now focusing maybe a little bit more on the Wi-Fi routers and the smart home hubs, because they cover a very wide range. But all of these certification programs, I mean, they have just a few companies have signed up so far, but there's a very strong signal to the market that the governments are taking this very seriously. And some countries are taking even a stronger path here with legislation, like the UK, that they had first also the self-regulation that was in place, but now moving towards legislation. So they are really moving ahead. So this might be a de facto standard or an example for the other countries, or maybe wider organizations like also the EU, to look into things like this. But yeah, I mean, those are very good movements overall for the industry. And now that the manufacturers of these devices are more aware of these and looking into this, so it's giving a boost for all of these efforts that they are doing.
Great, thanks. Sharon, did you have some perspectives on that? What can we learn from efforts in other countries?
Yeah, it's very interesting, and I agree with everything that was just said. I think this is the natural course of events is first the standards, and then the certification, and then the legislation. So I think this is a signal that shows the market, the manufacturers, that the days that cybersecurity and privacy could be done without much thought into it and focus just on price and speed are over. And manufacturers need to do more. And I think what's interesting is if we look on the Singapore one, for example, that this is now being given for free. The certification is given for free for the manufacturers to incentivize them to do the right thing. And the right thing meaning to give more visibility and empower the consumers that they know what they're buying, and also allowing the manufacturers to differentiate on cybersecurity and enjoy the benefits of being the first, of taking this additional effort. And I think the next step will be mass adoption of this. This is the early days, and we see that only a few manufacturers are doing this, but this will become, in my opinion, we'll see more and more manufacturers going in this direction and more legislation and regulation coming in the years to come.
Got it. Anyone has a different perspective or would like to chime in here?
Oh, I absolutely have some stuff. So I can tell you that the IoT Alliance, one of the things that actually was a catalyst to start up the Alliance was the introduction of State Bill 327 here in California. So State Bill 327, for those who don't know it, requires that all devices sold inside California have no universal passwords, and the troublesome part of it is and reasonable security. So this is another great example, right? This was the lawmakers regulators looking to do the right thing. What it really did was it left manufacturers questioning, what do I need to do, right? I get the no universal password thing, but how do I deal with reasonable security? What's reasonable? What's not reasonable? What are the penalties if I do this thing wrong? The worst part about this was that's just California, and I'm not sure if you guys have noticed this, but the internet and IoT actually goes across all these different countries. It's not a state, it's not a country, it's international in nature. So the problem with these small, and I shouldn't even just say small, but regional regulations, one, they don't solve the overall problem. Two, they create great difficulties for manufacturers who are building in scale. Three, they often contradict each other. So you're really stuck with, how do I address certain markets? The last one, just to take an example on that State Bill 327, that sort of spread like wildfire through the states, and each state picked it on up. But each of the legislators, in order to earn their salary, I guess they wanted to debate and add or change. So what you actually see is State Bill 327 gets adopted by Oregon with a couple small twists, gets thrown over to Virginia with even a couple more twists. And what you'll find is each one of these becomes tweaks on the password rules and things like that. And I challenge the light bulb manufacturer who is going to have to build the light bulb that follows the Mississippi password rules. So regulations are good. They set the boundaries, but done without a proper back and forth with the industry becomes challenging. So that's really where, IOXT, this is really, really strong to what we're looking at is at the core, we really think that things need to be, and it's these three principles always follow everything we do. It has to be testable, scalable, and customer impactful. And if you take a look at some of these regulations, quite a few of them become aspirational, feel good, but how do you scale it across the wide range of devices and things like that? Now, with all that being said, there is great things. The regulations are helping move industry forward, but I just want to caution that the next layer down, when you actually look at what's being talked about, sometimes there is some difficulties in what's happening there.
And just to add 2 words about what Brad said, it's really creating some problem, and also technology is usually a few steps ahead of regulation, which is another big problem. By the time the regulation is out, it's usually very gray, and then the manufacturers don't know how to deal with it. And also the advanced technology that there is already is much more advanced than the regulation asks for.
Got it. All right. We'll move into our next question. So one of the things a lot of us are experiencing now is that there's somewhat of a trade-off, right, between having rigorous security and ease of use. So even something as simple as two-factor authentication, it's making our products and our services more secure, but at the same time, it's taking us longer to access, the services and products that we want to access, that kind of thing. So what I want to know is, are there any technologies out there or initiatives that's helping to, sort of lessen that trade-off between sort of rigorous or, robust security and user experience?
So
anyone can kick off. Sharon, you want to go?
Sure, thank you. So in many cases, it's true that there is a trade-off between security and impact on the users if we're talking about multi-factor or two-factor authentication, but it doesn't necessarily need to be the case. In this case of IoT security, you can implement a lot of best practices like closing ports, encryption, and combining it with proactive security, and that doesn't interfere and doesn't hurt user experience at all. And Firedom, that's our technology. What we built is advanced endpoint protection for the IoT devices, and from a user perspective, you get a secure device and with no interference for your day-to-day usage of it or user experience. And you talked about blockchain, or like there is no need to go to that direction. In our opinion, in my opinion, it doesn't need. We don't need to go there. It's over complicating and not necessary. You can do a lot of great things with endpoint protection, with embedded security on the devices, as we do at Firedom.
Yeah, I would say there are a couple of other things to consider here. First is privacy by design. We've been hearing that, and that is very central, and that has to really be infused into the entire developmental life cycle. And it's not just about developing good products, it's also about sustaining that good product and secure product, and also the integrity of the data that you have. Those are two different things. Security is one problem, privacy is a completely different problem. And you need to have that for the entire duration of that product in the marketplace. And research is suggesting that consumers are saying that they anticipate it to be a smart device lasting anywhere between 5 to 10 years, for example. So it takes these independent authorities that are doing the testing and certification to ensure that there's also the substance behind these entities to be able to support that kind of product in the marketplace for that long. Otherwise, we'll be, these will move into the background and present lots of additional problems. I think that they are also technologies like privacy preserving computational techniques that have grown, that have been proven to be very effective. I think there's also tremendous change in the kind of architecture that we're seeing. But again, probably Paula and Sharon can speak more to it as a technology company in that area. However, I do believe, and I'm a strong believer of blockchain, so I'll champion that. I know Sharon said probably don't need to go into that, but I do think is, the inherent qualities like trustless, permissionless, and even censorship resistant are some of the qualities associated with this that can aid this entire IoT marketplace. However, it hasn't arrived at a level of maturity yet. There are many applications that I've seen and many different technologies that have been used, built on a variety of different platforms like Ethereum, that have been proven to be very successful. But I think notwithstanding those robust technologies, we're faced with a challenge right now where consumers are having a difficult time accepting basic technology, and the challenges associated with that. Usually when you speak about blockchain, inevitably they move to Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, and we lose them even further. So I think it's in early stages. I think that there's some obviously psychological and social impediments that will have to be overcome. But what was stated earlier is core, and that is, I think it's not just a question about the inherent technologies and techniques that can be used in the device and in the manufacturing of those devices effectively. It's also this entire regime, regulatory regime on the side. So certification and the prudent practices of credible development initiatives. I think when you can't focus on this to be overall where we want it to be in adoption and successful without having that comprehensiveness. Remember, most of the regulatory and legislative frameworks are mature with respect to conventional IT, so the laptop. That rubric of regulation is currently being asked to support IoT. And so there are inherent limitations. That's why what Europe has done by being more holistic and comprehensive in terms of trying to coalesce the different agencies and try to create some standardization and certification and do it in a, among all member states participating, to the point that Brad had raised. California might take something and then every other state brings a slight nuance to it that makes it difficult for manufacturers to comply with it, but it continues to create a highly fragmented environment. And that is when we start getting tension between commerce and innovation, because it'll stifle that. It's very hard to achieve that. So I don't think that there is one magic bullet. It's an ecosystem approach where we have to all come together and be able to respectively improve it. But I'm a strong believer that indeed emerging technologies like blockchain will have a place to play in this over time.
Got it. Paula, did you have any thoughts on that, or any technologies you can tell us about?
Sure. I mean, basically, if you think about technology, but it's maybe more about the, as ELIM said as well, that it's about the security life cycle, that security is not one thing that you implement once and then it's ticked off and then you can forget about it. It's a process, it's a life cycle. So it means that it needs to be part of the planning of that product or service from the beginning onwards. So think about how to do this. How can I later on update this software so it's not only once done and there it is. So I can easily, if there's a security vulnerability or a risk, that I am able to update this device or service that the consumer is using. That's key part of building. There's a lot of things that these industry standards or the certification work also helps to define what could be part of that, making it more secure for those companies. But it's more of like a mindset shift, that it's not just like I make this device and it's off to the market. It's more about it's a service, and as it's connected, it's going to be, it's more of a long-term service that has a life cycle, and I have to take care of the security for the length of that life cycle and plan it already from day one when I'm implementing that product.
Got it. Thank you. And I guess this question sort of continues on that, because you're talking about, businesses investing in means of, implementing long-term security and building consumer trust. So the question is, cybersecurity liability has become a major point of exposure for all connected ecosystem players. And how is this affecting their behavior? What do you see happening? What are they doing as a result of this? Let's kick that off with ELIM.
There, my mic is on. Yeah. The average cost of a breach is 3.9 million globally. And the US leads the pack, where the average cost of a breach is 8.19 million. Healthcare being, that's with healthcare, and the average being about 6 million. So it's costly for you to be negligent or dismissive about it. However, what we're seeing is, notwithstanding this enormous growth in the costliness of a breach, and I'm just giving you a financial number, not to mention all the other reputational and other intangible benefit, adverse effects that it may have, is it obviously doesn't inspire confidence in consumers buying it, and then will have a lot of consequential effects in that area. So there is a need for more effort. However, some studies that have been coming out recently have been suggesting that at the executive levels, there's been a little bit of a pullback in their investments in security spending. And the reason for it is because whereas there was a rush to be able to invest in this area because of the importance, they are now tempered because they're concerned about the relative ROI, prove the success of it. And so I think that that's in part because anything in its infancy will always have challenges. But I think as we continue to grow, what's happening is with the plethora of different organizations at the governmental level and at the private level that are providing for abilities to be able to quantitatively measure the results of all of this, I think what you will see is that there will be increasing efforts to make solid investments in this particular area to hold both those that are software or other security company providers to demonstrate what they're doing and the value they'll provide and be able to actually achieve this. But I think at the end of the day, the penalties are the most significant impact that the industry will have on manufacturers and service providers to ensure that they maintain the most robust of standards. For us, at the end of the day, as an insurer, risk creates opportunity. And so as a result of that, this is a very problematic area, especially if it can be quite out of control, is the fact that we're seeing high growth in cybersecurity insurance provisioning. That's one of the highest growth categories. But there's also an increased demand for services like, the panelists that we have here today, to be able to provide for tools that allow insurers like us to be able to employ that so that we can actually measure and quantify what the status is, and then hold entities and OEMs and others accountable to make the necessary improvements and have risk commensurate with that. So when you look at cybersecurity insurance policies, even as little as 5 years ago, it was a very rudimentary process, right? It was based on elements like how much revenue. Today, it's actually because there are tools available, we can look at actually the risk by virtue of the actual configuration and other elements. So I think that there's massive opportunity. I think that it's going to be a challenge, again, against the price that people want to see it go down relative to the fact that you're going to need insurance. And then also because of M2M and this interconnectivity of devices, it's going to create another level of challenges, which is accountability in terms of who has ownership of product liability. So again, just like the IoT started with, which is complexity that we have to try to figure out, I think here as well, we're in early stages, but it's growing very rapidly, and we have to address it again in that ecosystem approach.
Great thoughts. So before I get into the audience questions, I did want to ask Brad if he had any thoughts on that as well. Just how businesses are responding to the fact that cybersecurity is becoming such a liability.
Oh, absolutely. I want to take your question. I'm going back up and comment on something that ELIM really did, but I'll come back to it, I promise.
No problem.
So what's really interesting from you think about an insurer and actually having these devices out there, we have in our alliance a whole lot of commercial lighting, commercial building controls. And one of the interesting questions is, right, is these systems that are out there 15, 20 years, is IoT going to become the asbestos of the 21st century, right? So the stuff that we deploy, the stuff that we scatter thousands, millions of sensors up in the ceilings behind drywall and everything, if we've got a critical flaw where these systems can all be attacked, shut down buildings and everything, think about the cost to retrofit and pull this stuff out 20 years from now after we've built our constrained devices, saved a nickel, and made it so that we can't support the common crypto libraries of today. So I caution that as you look at the futurability expansion of the devices. Back to the actual manufacturers, though, I do think that you've got the combination of lawsuits, class action lawsuits. When in the old days, when the wig-wag switch in a washing machine broke, that was one device. When the connection to all your washing machines for the entire North American fleet goes out, that's a class of devices. So, you've opened yourself up that a single failure in the cloud to all these devices could be class action lawsuits against you, and that adds up super fast. The last one that I really want to touch on, though, is also the federal or the regulatory fine/penalties. Just earlier, I think it was earlier this year, TapLock, they were a Kickstarter startup. They went and did a Bluetooth lock, if I remember right. They had some security issues, and the FTC now has taken this small startup, and for the next 20 years, they're now going to have third-party assessments, controls over what they do, and have the government look over and manage their stuff, right? So think about that as a startup. You're thinking, man, 5 years, where am I selling, exiting, this kind of thing. The government's saying 20 years, you're on the hook for this. And I can't remember what the penalty if they fail to do this. So the penalties from civil lawsuits, from government agencies, or from the end users of having to redeploy is large.
Great, thank you. All right, let me hop on over to the questions from our audience. And the first one is, what if the paradigm was to assume that all devices are insecure and secure the network and the cloud instead? So I guess it's saying, is it better to secure the network and the cloud versus focusing on the devices? This is how I interpret that. I'm going to ask Sharon and Paula to jump in on this one.
Sure. So if I may start, there's no shortcuts. You need to protect the whole platform. A hacker can attack the wide-scale attack on devices, can also attack the cloud. You can't pick and choose. You have to have a full platform security on all aspects of the solution: the cloud, the mobile app, and the device itself. So there are no shortcuts, unfortunately.
Got it. Thank you. How about you, Paula? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, since we have these loads of devices with poor security in our homes, so how on earth am I going to protect these as a consumer? And I'm not going to replace all of my devices every year, so they will be there for a long time. So that's why we also are driving this solution that protects all the devices, that we are integrating our security component, for example, on the router, that the Wi-Fi router that the service provider is offering the consumers. And that technology is then providing protection for all of those devices in the home. But as Sharon said, that's not enough to just protect the devices in the home network, but also as all of those smart home devices are connected to cloud services or apps that we use to manage these services, to look at our data, then that needs to be protected as well. And of course, things like good password hygiene helps a lot, that you're not one of the first victims for identity theft and so on. And of course, there's identity monitoring solutions to see if you have been part of a breach. But it's a lot of layers, and there are no shortcuts. So it's about what you can do today and how you can add those layers of security to be better protected.
And just one more point, if I may. And it also comes back to what we talked about, certification and liability. These security solutions, the framework has to evolve with time. If you have a solution that is just security by design or privacy by design, but it's good for today, and tomorrow there'll be a new type of attack, a zero-day attack, and the devices or the cloud is not protected, then that's it. That's game over. So the solution has to be ever-learning, has to be dynamic, has to change over time. Firedom, of course, does it, but in any case, you need to look for those types of infrastructure solutions, because otherwise, the whole security is at risk the day that you release the product.
Great. You wanted to jump in on this one too?
Yeah, can I ask one quick question, since we have the benefit of two specialists here? Does 5G create an opportunity for the adoption of different hardware solutions that will help to mitigate some of the challenges that we're having?
Well, I mean, all of the security solution can be also virtualized in the 5G network as well. So if you have IoT devices in the future that you take with you and connect directly to the 5G network, they can be protected through the network as well. So that can be also a solution to that problem.
Okay. Did you have any thoughts on that one, Sharon?
So 5G has its own security risk. It's a different communication, but still security is not less important there, and you need to deal with the risk that it brings as well.
Yeah, I was thinking more along the line as well that, you know, there are going to be new routers, there are going to be new devices. And so there's going to be an opportunity for those solutions now to be embedded with more robust contemporary technologies. And, you know, I was going more in that direction, that I think there's going to be a transformation. Consumers are going to be adopting new products with this change, and it may present itself as a brilliant opportunity to bring all of these changes. And
definitely, but you need to remember that in our houses, we already have a lot of older devices. And your security of the network is as secure as the least secure device in your network.
Right.
So even if you bring on stronger devices from a security standpoint, you're still very vulnerable because of the other older devices and less protected devices you have.
Great. All right.
But I'll even jump in on that super quick. What, you know, it really is back to the basics, and I'll go quick, I promise. The interesting thing, we were actually certifying some 5G here, and even with the manufacturer, we still saw admin as a password, right? So if you don't do the basics, doesn't matter the technology, you're still going to shoot yourself in the foot. So that was just disheartening to see, but yeah, 5G device with admin, awesome.
Yeah. Thank you for those final thoughts, Brad, and thank you so much for the question, ELIM. But with that will have to be your last comment, and we will have to wrap this session up. Thank you guys so much for your insights. They were very well appreciated. For the audience, stay tuned for our next session, which will start at 4:45 p.m. Central Time. It is titled Building the New Home Services Bundle. So please join us for that. Again, I want to thank our sponsors, Alarm.com, Amtrust, Plume, and Airties, and also the additional supporters of the event. Thank you very much. And to the speakers who participate in our events year after year after year. Thank you so much. Join our Connections community events. As a number of my colleagues mentioned earlier, we will be having these events throughout the year. So you can find more information on our website about how you can join and engage with us during those events.